Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for this session on modernizing your project management with the Microsoft Power Platform. In today's session, we're going to be digging into some of the new ideas that are possible with having the Power Platform at your disposal. Just to get us started, maybe some introductions. We'll talk about some of the challenges that we face in project management typically. I'm going to go ahead and put our presentation into full screen mode here, and we'll talk about some of the challenges that have caused us to look at this approach. So obviously project management has been around a really long time, and the industries that are out there in technology and construction and everything else have had many different ways of trying to block and tackle the measurement, management, the tracking, the organization, communication, coordination of project delivery over time. In, in support of that, a number of different organizations have come up around the world in order to put some formulas into place and some patterns of practice into place in order to try and make this experience manageable. It's a complex activity. Many projects have a large number of team members who are working on them. They have a long duration and a lot of different tasks that have to be accomplished. And that leads to the need for structure. Out of that structure, then, if you were to look at, for instance, in the United States, the Project Management Institute, you would find that there are a lot of definitions about what the knowledge areas within project management are, what the types of templates and necessary documentation is in order to be effective as a project manager. This attempt to create a set of standards and methods of delivery has been going on for decades. As a consequence, a lot of the approaches were built based on the technologies that were available in their moment. So when the PMI really starts to get to work, we're working with documents. And in the world, we just get used to the idea that everything's a document. We're going to stuff everything into a document. We advance a little bit when we start having spreadsheets because, well, spreadsheets give us this interesting way of keeping track of lists of information. And you find that if you were to look around the world right now, some of the most common tools used for project management are literally documents and spreadsheets up until this point. However, at GreenData, we've looked at that for 2 decades almost at this point, and we have been asking ourselves, is that the best we can do? Is that the optimal way to do things? We're approaching this from a first principles standpoint, and we're saying, hey, technology has advanced, the way that we do work has advanced. Could we rethink this problem, and could we do better? So some of the things that we identified is that oftentimes spreadsheets and documents end up being more like doorstops. So I don't know if you have ever worked in large governmental organizations, but there's some history in the United States in government where consulting companies or team members, government, bureaucrats or whatever, have actually created enormous binders full of information to try and manage the various projects that government undertakes. Government projects are not small. They tend to be vast in scope. They tend to have tremendous numbers of people working on them. And they literally, in the 80s and earlier, resulted in reams and reams of paper being consumed. So we think that's problematic. We think that the creation of all of these document objects that just sort of sit around and they become very static very quickly, we think that's problematic. So we see this challenge of doorstops instead of data. The second challenge we find that happens a lot is that people are constantly hunting to try and find the latest thing. In a tribute back to a no longer in existence industry service provider in communications, WorldCom, would literally send most of the project assets back and forth over email constantly. The worst offender, of course, was the project schedule, because then dozens of people would be interacting with these quote unquote documents, and there was no meaningful way to identify which was the most recent. This was causing just chaos in terms of trying to track and manage. And that resulted in some interesting consequences in how projects are managed from that time period. A lot of the project management tools from that time period started to move towards this idea of check in, check out. They moved towards this idea that you needed to have a rigid set of rules for when people could update things. Time has moved on, technology has moved on, there are more options. Also, with a lot of this content, people just never look back. So it just sits there off in a corner. Yeah, you know that there was a project. You know that there were requirements documents, that there were communication plans, that there were project management plans and resource management plans and all of these different assets. But it's like out of sight, out of mind. It's stuff that is just fallen away, and they just go into some kind of a document folder or document repository, file structure, or whatever, and that's where they stay. I've spoken to state governments, I've spoken to large corporations, I've spoken to small startups. It never really changes. Once something has been considered to be complete, nobody looks back, and nobody really learns from what has gone before. A lot of this has to do with the fact that there's no meaningful way to unearth the information that is stored. So this is going to be a big, center point for this discussion. Another big thing that happens out of this problem of content flying around in documents is that sometimes really useful information to understand how performance is taking place or not taking place, again, just becomes, static data. It just sits there. There's no comparison. You create a status report, my favorite example. You create a status report, but that status report is a PowerPoint, or that status report is a PDF. It's sitting in SharePoint. It's sitting in Google Drive. It's sitting somewhere. And if you were to look at status report from last week to status report for this week, who does that? Who actually goes back and looks at the status report, even for the prior week, to see if we're measurably solving problems or changing our outcomes? That's just, this is the whole set of challenges that we see. And this is why we're asking these questions and saying, hey, can't we do something about this? Can't we modernize where we're at? Okay, so what we see as a new take on this, we have been looking at these questions and saying, well, what would we do differently? If we're trying to turn everything from doorstops into data, how would we go about that? And is there a significant technology change that can help us? If you were to look back 10 years ago, if you wanted to create specific, applets, if you will, small bite-sized things that solve point solution problems, you would need a software developer. You'd need possibly a team of software developers, and they would spend an inordinate amount of time trying to dig away at and build specific applications to solve these, these mini business problems, if you will. And from a time value of money standpoint, this becomes prohibitively expensive for any of us. If you have to literally, build from the ground up to solve a specific problem, it raises the question, do I have resources to do that? Are there other things that my resources should be working on that are either making me more money or saving me more money or increasing productivity? Is this the most important thing? But what has changed in the past 5 or 6 years is that the idea of low-code applications have become possible. So we've started to see this first in business intelligence. We started to see that citizen data analysts, meaning the average user inside of a company, could look at this visualization tool, they could look at some data, and they could cobble together a report for their manager. We used to do those kinds of things back at the end of the 80s, early 90s in spreadsheets, and to a great degree, spreadsheets were a leveling force, enabling a lot of different people and companies to be able to do essential financial modeling. And up until the point where custom systems for accounting and for other purposes became widespread, tremendous numbers of companies would do a lot of modeling, financial modeling in spreadsheets. And that's cool. That's great. We then advance that with our business intelligence tools to allow our everyday, user within the organization to actually produce compelling reports. So I need to produce a report showing my sales metrics over the past 6 months and what my predicted metrics are for the next 6 months. Or I need to do a report showing what the overall state of health of the project portfolio is. Those things started to become much more meaningfully attainable and achievable with the advent of low-code platforms for doing business reporting. But as we continue stepping forward into the next couple of years, we start to see that this same idea permeates into business process optimization. Suddenly, you don't need a team of 500 or even $1,000 per hour consultants and a highly specialized system to build your own workflow to automate some kind of a process. And we have a lot of processes to automate. There's tremendous numbers of things that go through approval routing, tremendous numbers of things where we have to block and tackle a action and pass it along between a number of different people in an organization. This comes up constantly in project management with the idea of project demand management. So we have this need to identify the next set of projects that the organization needs and who's going to perform them. But we also need to be able to validate that it's the right thing to do, that we have budget, that we have the tools in order to be successful, that it's technically feasible, financially feasible, that it's the right time, that it's the right priority. So again, being able to put the ability in the average user's hands and not requiring a software developer or a highly paid consultant to do these things, that was a huge advancement. And that then takes us forward to one of the most recent advancements, which is the idea of low-code applications. So we've moved from reporting to automation to now being able to do applications this way. And the coolest thing about this is Microsoft's right there with us. Each of those things I just mentioned is part of the Power Platform. So we have Power BI to do the reporting. We have Power Automate to be able to do automations and workflows. And now we have Power Apps to be able to do these kinds of low-code application experiences. So this led us to that question at the beginning, which was, we don't want things to be doorstops. We believe at GreenData that all documents should be data sets. If I'm creating a risk register, or if I'm creating a project charter, or if I'm creating a communication plan, or if I'm creating a safety plan in an industrial situation, we believe that literally all documents ultimately should be data sets. Cool. What else do we believe? Well, we think that project management in general, it is data-driven to a degree, but we think that all aspects of it should be data-driven. In order to realize this and in order to be able to understand who's doing what, we need to be able to easily manage identification and tracking, who sent the status report, what's the status of the issue or the risk, who presented that decision, who presented that bug, whatever. We need to be able to communicate effectively. At the heart of project management, everything is a data-driven activity and a communication activity. We think that we can leverage a combination of these things together to increase and support good decision-making and to improve overall the conduct of the project lifecycle. But to be able to do that, it's just super critical that we create a supportive set of tools, that we get out of the way of the team members. We don't want our team members to spend infinite amount of time doing all of their activities for their to deliver their work. So these are all key points in order for us to be able to reimagine what this should all look like. Okay. And at the outcome, of all this, we need to make it possible for all of the members of our organization, from the topmost leader to the person who's on the front line doing the work, to understand what's going on. So we really need to end this black market in project data, and we think that we can do something about that. So we're going to do a couple of different demos, and we're going to dig into this a bit. We're going to concentrate on, some examples of what we are doing at GreenData with our customers, and we're going to talk a little bit about and ask you if you have questions about how this could be productive and support your goals. Okay, so let's jump forward. First thing we're going to do is show you some things that we can do in Power Automate. So I'm going to get into demonstration mode here. I'm going to get out of our slides here, and I'm going to pull something over onto our screen. All right, so I mentioned the word project charter application some time ago, and I wanted to give you a snapshot of, well, what could that look like? So here we just have some made up names, Project Kajagoogoo and Project Madababa, and each of these is just a fictitious project, no particular specialness about it, but we do have the ability to start to consume and show all of the charters for all of our projects across our entire portfolio. We can have them be searchable. We can have any metrics or information about what was decided, what was initially identified as the purpose of the project, what was the scope. All of that is now, instead of in a document, in a set of forms, and therefore by extension, obviously, in a data set. So this is just one example based on a specific project charter template from one of our clients. You'll see that it's trying to catch initial information about what is expected. Is this supposed to be in construction? Is it policy development? Is it software acquisition? When do we need this done by? What is our confidence in that date being attainable or achievable? Who within our IT department is going to be responsible for what? Similarly, who's going to sponsor it? Who is going to be, or when did that sponsor approve it? So all the things that you would be used to seeing in a project charter that is either in a PowerPoint, or a project charter that's in a spreadsheet, or a project charter that's in a Word document, Google document, whatever. All those things, instead of them just being boxes that get filled in, they're now form objects, and this flows then into a backend data set. And I can show you roughly what that data set looks like. Now, obviously, if we've put everything into a data set, now we can start combining things. So when we're doing scheduling in whatever scheduling tool we choose to use, Monday, Smartsheet, Project Online, Project for the Web, Primavera, Azure DevOps, Jira, whatever tool we're using to do scheduling, we now have this rich set of metadata about the project that can be combined into reports. Cool. So we can actually measure key benefits in a very realistic way. Right now, we just have the idea of a box of information saying these are what the key benefits are. We could take this even further steps and be more specific and say, is it a benefit related to this strategic objective of the organization? Is it a benefit to this other strategic objective of the organization? We can get as specific as we need. And I think this is the most important point to talk about in regard to the low-code world. Although you see all these things on your screen, and although this took some time to build, we're talking hours, not days, days, not weeks, weeks, not months. To build compelling experiences and to sustain them, we're just tearing loose just huge amounts of time in trying to build these experiences in a custom application world. We're advancing past the custom application world. And you're going to find that these tools, Power Apps, are used by almost any corporation you could imagine at this point. Microsoft has been incredibly successful in onboarding enterprise corporations all across the globe to leverage these tools. So don't think of this as something that you may just use in the organization that you're currently in. Think of this as a muscle you're building that you can now apply anywhere you go. Okay, so let's talk about modification and just changes and reflecting your specific project charter. So changing things, no kidding, is a matter of going into an experience that looks like this. Let's explain this for a second. I'm just going to run us really quickly through the interface. As is typical for Microsoft-based applications, you have a ribbon at the top of the interface. You have a menu structure at the top of the interface. So many of the application-wide things that you might be able to do are essentially in the top of the interface. Because this experience is somewhat informed by the ideas of layers and things that people in graphic design and in web design have been doing for a really long time, you end up seeing a hierarchy structure over in the left here, the tree view. The tree view is a reflection of the layers of things that may be showing on the screen. Now, we've tried to be really thoughtful about this, and we want every application to essentially be what I'm calling or coining the term the single pane of glass experience. In consulting and in technology across multiple companies, this topic has come up a lot. How do I create a single pane of glass that the user can use so that they're not constantly having to switch over and over and over in order to get something done? Now, it gets modified a little bit by the experience we've all had with mobile applications on smartphones. That experience has suggested to us, as long as we can get very focused on the task at hand, a point solution, if you will, we're okay with switching from one app to the next, to the next, to the next. It's okay having 20 different applications. But those applications better be incredibly intuitive. They better be very specific, and essentially in one particular application, there should be as much as possible a single pane of glass. I shouldn't have to bounce around a lot in order to get something done. And I shouldn't have to wait for the application to substantially update to be able to get things done. And you saw that a second ago when we went to the add charter experience. It just popped over a form on top of the main pane of glass or the main screen in order to achieve that goal. So I said that I was going to show you how easy it would be to potentially change this charter. So what we have here is a set of fields in a form. So if we look over on the left here, we see the form, and that form is for, it says form case. The case container happens to have in it all of the different fields that we're seeing in the main body of the editing experience here. So I have out of scope, I have a scope statement, I have key benefits, dependencies, what program is this project part of, who's the owner, what is the current status of this charter? Is it ready to go? Is it not ready to go? All these kinds of things, right? So if I want to get rid of some things, well, it's literally as easy as highlighting the thing I want to get rid of and pressing the delete key on my keyboard. Cool. But if I want to add things to this form, I have over to the right-hand side of my experience, and this again is kind of informed on the basis of graphic designers have a property page and then they have a layers area. So again, reflecting upon things that you may have seen in other situations. But I can literally go to the field area here, and I can say edit, and it will show me that I have the same set of things that I'm seeing in the tree view on the right. It'll show me all those things, but also has an add field area. And if I add field, it is showing me everything that is available to me in the connected data set. So when I say data set in this case, we're referring to a specific table. So within this particular table, the table dedicated to new charters, there is a series of fields, and if there is a field missing, I can always, again, we're talking low code here. So again, if I have a field that's missing, I can add that field to the data set, to the table. It's very easy to do that. I'm abstracted away from SQL. I don't have to do this convoluted set of things where I have to understand SQL query language to do it. I get wizards and panels similar to this. So this is huge. This allows us to then start thinking of the idea of building something in a day. If I were to tell you exactly what amount of time it took me combining this build activity of designing the interface and building out all the componentry to it, contrasted against the original Word document that was the template upon which this is based, this was a one-day activity. I'm not saying that you don't have to learn some things. You definitely have to learn some things to be successful, but it was a one-day activity. That's almost unfathomable compared to creating these kinds of application experiences in the past. Okay, let's advance a little bit more and let's look at something else. So we've looked at the beginning of project management. That's a charter. We spend a lot of time in a charter to figure out what's up and to get a job done. But now let's look at the far side of the coin with the idea of accruals. Accruals are essentially about I need to capture the expended dollars for this month. So for a particular effort, I need to capture that there were, $1,000 spent on this project, $20,000 spent on that project, $15,000 spent on this other project. All of those things need to be captured. So today, how does that happen in organizations? Okay, if you're a project manager, as opposed to the accounting department, as a project manager, you're most likely, especially if you have a complex project, you're most likely keeping track of this in a spreadsheet. Okay, what's the plus of that? The plus of that is that you're used to spreadsheets. It's pretty easy to update a spreadsheet. Cool, happy, happy. What's the minus of that? Well, the minus of that is that it's not data. It's not something that you could easily draw forward into a report for your leadership or your managers. It's a spreadsheet. You can send them the spreadsheet and they'll be okay with that to a degree, but it doesn't really make it easier for the consumer to analyze the information. It's great as a tool for capture. It's great for you to do modeling or to, as the detail-oriented project manager that we all are, it's great for us in order to be able to track. But from a reporting standpoint, it's just not awesome. So, okay, well, how are we going to deal with that situation? Well, the thing is, if we start using these kinds of application experiences and we're using the Power Platform, we can do a lot more. So when one of our vendors who is working on a project or one of our team members has an expense, vendor has an invoice, whatever, we can actually consume that through an automation and we can dump the results into the data set and we can see the results in an application interface kind of like this one, and we can look at the results in detail, right? So we can see what the information about the specific project happens to be. Is it to just settle and deal with a specific hardware request at the office or at a plant or whatever? What is the type of information we're trying to keep track of? All of this information starts to become data that we can interact with. If you as the recipient project manager needs to make adjustments or needs to provide more detail, we can make associations with what's going on in the accounting system. All of this kind of stuff starts to become a set of data together that you can interact with. Well, why does that matter? Okay, let's just be honest here. The way that these invoices and expenses are coming into organizations now is accounting receives it from whoever. So maybe it's a team member in your project, or maybe it's a vendor who's doing work for you. They receive the information, it shoves itself into accounting. Accounting, most of the time, hand enters that into the accounting system. This is already like something that, gives me indigestion. But once they've moved into the accounting system, how do you get it? You're the project manager. You're supposed to know what's happening on the actuals of your project. Well, in a lot of cases, you ask for an extract from accounting. They actually do an extract from the accounting system. You get a CSV file, and then what do you do with it? Well, you have to keep track of the information on your project, and you have to organize it and properly align it with what you're trying to do. So you tend to copy it from their spreadsheet that they gave you as an extract to your spreadsheet where you have it organized in a manner that enables you to be effective in tracking. This, again, gives me indigestion. That is ripe for a lot of automation. And that is what we're doing here. We're taking advantage of the Power Platform to modernize this whole process and say, let's have accounting consume the invoices through automation. Let's use AI to digest those invoices. Let's put the data into the accounting system. Awesome, awesome. Now let's take the information and let's connect it out through automation to a data repository or a data warehouse where summarized information or information that is controlled for you as a project manager or as a PMO director or what have you, for you to be able to consume it, Let's then surface that information in easy to use experiences like this Accruals experience. Let's give you the tools to be able to update the data so that it can be integrated back into the data warehouse, or so that you can add the specific things that you need to add in order for this information to be transmittable into reports. Cool. So those are just a couple of examples where we can start to automate. Let's dive for a few more moments a little deeper into a couple other examples here. So I'm going to go back to home, and I'm going to go into the idea of logs. So this comes up a lot. Project managers log the heck out of everything. And in the history of technologies that are supportive of logs, you could definitely point to a couple that come up all the time. Issue logs come up all the time. Risk logs come up all the time. Bug or enhancement requests, that kind of a log comes up all the time. You see some others as well. You'll see stakeholders or contacts, that comes up all the time. But then there's more. And just as a shot across the bow, you see that some of the ones I just mentioned are here. Now, why am I putting this into this tool when it's possible that especially issues and risks may already be in the other tool? Like it could be in Primavera, or it could be in Project Online, or what have you. Why am I doing this? Well, here's the funny thing. Almost no organization can harmonize on one project management system. It just really doesn't happen. You have different tools that support different needs. If you're a project manager who is working with software developers, I would bet dollars to donuts that you are either using Azure DevOps, GitHub, or Jira as your tool for keeping track of your backlog, as your tool for keeping track of the releases, of keeping track of the agile project that is wrapped around those releases. Most likely you're doing that. But on the flip side, most likely if you're in marketing, or if you're in mergers and acquisitions, or if you're in just doing software implementations or small project activities, you're not in Jira, you're not in Azure DevOps, you're not in GitHub. You're most likely sitting in some tool like Project Online, Smartsheet, Monday, Asana. You could be in Primavera if you're doing construction project management. I guarantee you no one in construction is doing their construction project management in Jira. It's like almost an impossibility. But what's funny is you might be doing construction project management, but in your construction project management, you might have some software to build. You might be using Jira also. So my point is, if we're really trying to get smart as an organization and manage risks effectively and manage issues effectively, we really need a tool that accounts for that across projects. We might have systemic risks that the organization has to care about. We might have individual project risks. We might have a risk that's associated with a particular software delivery. We need a way to be comprehensive about that. So again, we have this great platform. We have Power Apps, we have Power Automate, we have this Dataverse, this whole common data model sitting behind it. This gives us the freedom to actually do that, to accomplish that goal, to actually give us a way to deal with cross-tool risk management, cross-tool issue management, cross-tool decision log tracking, change log tracking. It's a quantum leap forward. This is a significant area of challenge. In the past, we would literally keep track of a lot of these things in spreadsheets. And I can tell you with authority that in one of our clients right now, in construction, they have to keep track of what are known as RFIs, requests for information. This is not a procurement term in this situation. This is a request for information to clarify a construction activity. Okay, well, they have to keep track of these things. These RFIs are landing in 4 different tracking tools at the moment, at least 4. And again, that just is problematic. We get lost. We can't figure out where the source of the truth is. We expend time hunting. We expend time doing the wrong thing because we looked at the wrong piece of data. We don't know what our system of record is. This is why, as a key step in modernization, why we think getting these things to be data in the first place is so critical. We need to get to the point where we have systems of record for all data objects in project management. So that's a key step in our modernization thesis. It's a key response to our first principles question of, can we reimagine this? Okay, so we've spent a lot of time now on some of our ideas around low-code applications, on the nature of the challenge that we face, and kind of getting at the grit of how we can solve some of these challenges. Now we're going to move into the flip side of this, and the happy space where we've solved the big problems at the bottom, the foundational level, and we can start actually showing awesome progress to our leadership. And with that, I'm actually going to turn this over. We have a recorded demonstration from our colleagues at Stratada. Stratada is a significant partner in crime with us. We work together to solve these kinds of thorny problems. We concentrate a lot on the blocking and tackling and the automation, the AI and stuff like that. They concentrate a lot on the data intelligence side of the equation with us.
Thank you, GreenData. At Stratata, we are focused on helping our customers support strategy with data analytics to improve business outcomes. Stratata is a Microsoft-certified data analytics partner, providing services and solutions on the Microsoft platform. Microsoft Power BI is a key focus for Stratata. We develop Power BI custom visuals, including the Stratata timeline and the Stratata taskboard, which each come in free standard versions and more feature-rich pro versions. We have 10 Power BI report packs designed for various industries and work management platforms. These are some examples. The standard versions of the report packs are also free. Time Intelligence is our solution for deep analysis of work management data. In most work management systems, updates overwrite previous values, meaning crucial data is lost. We capture that data, enabling trend and predictive analytics that give our customers a huge advantage. Let's take a look at one of our most popular products, the Stratata timeline visual for Power BI. The timeline was designed with the number of unique capabilities to meet our customers' needs and are not available in any other Power BI timeline. The timeline can display very impactful visualizations based on data from almost any work management solution, like Microsoft Project Online, Microsoft Project for the web, Jira, Smartsheet, OnePlan, and many more. There is a free version of the timeline visual as well as a pro version. Let's take a look at some of the capabilities of the pro timeline. This portfolio report shows timeline bars for a portfolio of projects colored by project health. Near the top of the visual, you will see our timeline controls, designed to allow report consumers to have more control over the visual elements displayed. We can toggle on timeline bar text, baseline bars, milestones, data labels, and progress bars. Because it has a red timeline bar, it looks like the HIPAA data compliance project appears to be in trouble, and we'd like to see more information. Let's select that bar and use Power BI's drill-through feature to see more details. In this sub-report, we can see that many tasks are slipping past baseline. There are almost limitless ways to configure the Stratata timeline. Here are just a few examples. This is a resource timeline. This is looking at phases on a single line versus looking at them on a waterfall view. Here's a birds on a wire report. Here's a star chart. There are many more examples to see on the Stratata website. Let's take a quick look at the Stratata task board. The task board was created based on many customer requests, as there is no similar visual available for Power BI. The task board can be driven based on data from many work management solutions like Project Online, Project for the Web, Jira, Smartsheet, OnePlan, and many others. There is a free version of the task board visual as well as a pro version. Both versions have the ability to display based on data from one or more projects at the same time. Let's take a look at some of the capabilities of the Pro Task Board. Here is the Stratata Task Board, showing data from an Azure DevOps project. We have multiple bucket categories. The buckets can be collapsed or expanded. They can be dragged and dropped to change the order. In addition to a header colored by a metric, in this case priority, each card can also have an icon based on a different metric, in this case work type. In the body of the card, there are 3 configurable text fields. There are many formatting options as well. What is Time Intelligence by Stratata? We created the time intelligence solution based on persistent questions around managing work and projects that we heard from our customers. For example, can we see the trends that led to our current state? How would we compare plan versus actual for key metrics? Are our forecasts improving over time? Is it possible to use data science to improve project delivery? These and similar questions have a common theme. They all require lots of historical data. But like many other line of business applications, work management systems generally overwrite existing data with any update. We created Time Intelligence to solve that problem. We use the secure, reliable, and performant Azure SQL database as the core, and created the ability to capture or snapshot data from work management systems. Our data model makes it easy to create reports in Power BI, Excel, or other business intelligence platforms. The real value of time intelligence is demonstrated in reports. So let's take a look at some of those. Here's a simple report based on time intelligence data. This is a typical project status report showing metrics, risks, and issues, and some narrative from the project manager around accomplishments and plans for the coming week. But in this report, we easily navigate to the previous periods to see how everything has changed over time. This colorful report helps us understand how the health of a group of projects has changed over time. In the past, many projects were yellow and some red, indicating growing problems with execution. Later corrective measures appear to have had good effect. Below, we can see health history per project grouped by project manager. Here's a more complex report that allows us to compare different metrics over time by selecting min and max states. In addition to the trend lines, we can see details for an individual project and how it has changed. With enough historical data, we can start to use Microsoft machine learning to create predictions for key metrics. The ability to know ahead of time when things are going off track, and using comparisons and sensitivity analysis to focus on the best corrective measures is the real promise of data-enabled artificial intelligence. For more information, go to stratada.com. Thanks for your time.
Feel free, of course, to reach out to us at GreenData. We are certainly at your disposal to try and address any of these kinds of modernization approaches. We can be reached at greendata.io. You can also reach us by communicating at hello@greendata.io to send us any emails. And of course, you'll see that we're going to continue with a number of additional deep dive and summary webinars as we continue forward to really dig at some of these interesting challenges and show ultimately what a modern project management system could look like. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up for today. Thank you everyone for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on another webinar in the future.